Every therapist needs a therapist. It is okay to not be okay. It is okay to not feel okay. And it is very okay to speak to someone to help you through the phase that you're feeling. You'll understand when it's need-based versus want-based. If it's want-based, you can still try and work with the slump from your father or the little push that you need, or of course, the nazar utaro.
Yeah,
the nazar. How can you forget the nazar?
That's India.
By the way, this is a controversial statement, but I don't personally believe that you need medication. I think you can do a lot with just talk therapy, thought therapy, and behavioral therapy as well. This whole thing of let it go and move on, I don't subscribe to that view, because I believe to let go of something, you have to hold on to it. And to move on from something, you have to go back to where it is and then move on.
I had a friend and he was just talking to me about that I'm getting so angry that it's now coming to my family. And I could see that he was teary-eyed because he realizes that there's something wrong, but he doesn't really know what to do about it.
As a therapist, I do not tell you I can get rid of your trauma. I never can, but I definitely can help you live a better life despite your trauma. I can't erase what happened to you. I'm not God.
Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Life Unscripted. Today, I have a very special guest who has tremendous experience. So a little bit about Shalini. She is into political science. She has been an actor. She works with emotional intelligence. She also works as a consultant to brands. There's a lot more. So today, we are going to touch base on something which we think, which we feel, but we don't really talk about. We are going to go deeper. We are going to understand how insecure we can be. And we are going to understand that it's okay. We are going to learn how to come out of it. We are going to understand that there's a way ahead. We are going to win. So, Shalini, please tell me that you have such a huge experience. How did it all start? What was the first thing that you started? And take us through those hoops. How did you jump all of them to reach where you are?
Right. So you were correct when you said that, I have a political science background. I am a political consultant. I'm from George Washington University, have a degree in lobbying. I'm a certified lobbyist, in fact. And when I moved to India, I realized that the political space was not a space that I was very comfortable working in. So I decided to take the principal foundations of it and develop it into brand consulting. And I became a brand consultant. But the essence behind the brand consulting was always that I focused a lot on consumer behavior, on the humanistic approach. And I used to laugh and say that what differentiated me from other brand strategists was that I never did B2B and B2C. I actually did B2H, brand to human. I spoke a lot about the human being. I did Martin Lindstrom's biology, which is BUY-ology. That's the neurological essence behind consumer buying patterns. I was so focused on the emotional quotient that I tried myself in saying that for me, it was mainly about how the consumer felt and what would make the consumer feel better. And then I got asked a question that, what is your game plan? What is your life plan? And I said, well, I've always wanted to modify individuals' lifestyles through emotional-based marketing and brand strategy. Today, I think I want to modify their lives. So I decided that at a later age in life, when my kids were much older, that I was going to actually take my emotional quotient, my EQ, that is, I would say, as strong as my IQ. I'm not arrogant, but I'm not modest either. And I will apply it towards developing myself into becoming a psychotherapist. And so through Harvard, NYU, Long Island University in New York, I decided to get these multiple certifications and degrees, and I became a psychotherapist. So today I focus on giving individuals the ability to be in touch with their emotions and to emotionally mature and to become more emotionally intelligent.
So being in the psychotherapy space, you must be having a lot of people coming to you and speaking about their mental issues.
Absolutely.
How do you overcome that toll that it brings? Because that's a lot of baggage.
It is.
You're listening to so many people, and we as humans, as you very well put it, we are bound to get attached to some of those thoughts. So how do you steer clear of them?
Well, I always say that every therapist needs a therapist. Okay. That is the fact. Okay. Every therapist has always been a client too. Okay. And continues to be a client. You're absolutely right, Sharad. And that's a very, very, I would say a very realistic, and I'm very, impressed that you understand this aspect that we as therapists need therapy. We need an outlet. We need somewhere to go to and talk about everything that we take on. So number one is, yes, we also need someone to speak to. For me, I don't necessarily speak to another therapist per se, but I'm a very spiritual person. So I have spiritual advisors that I like to do mindfulness with. So I process the energies that I take in and the trauma that comes vicariously to me. It's called vicarious trauma through my clients to me. I process that through mindfulness, through my own meditative ways. So I do meditation and I do talking and I actually do my mantras and things like that. But everybody needs somewhere and some way to release as well.
So I believe that spirituality is a good way to counter a lot of mental issues, and people these days are more inclined towards doing some sort of yoga or maybe zen exercises or maybe some sort of meditation.
Yeah.
Now beyond that, how important is it, like you very well said that you have your spiritual instructors with you, how important is to have a coach or a therapist or an instructor with you in all such scenarios, like anything that relates to your mental health?
I love that you brought that up because I always say, if you come to me as a client, now I play that role of expert, mentor, coach, therapist, whatever you want to call me. I come in that role, but I don't want to be someone that's healing you. I want to be someone that is training you to heal yourself. That is the end goal for me. I want to make you into your own therapist. So when you come to me or if you go to a coach, first thing I want you to admit that is that it is okay to not be okay. It is okay to not feel okay. And it is very okay to speak to someone to help you through the phase that you're feeling. But I also want you to then tell yourself that I'm not approaching this person codependent on them. I'm approaching them so that they help me start to learn how to heal myself. So when you ask me how important it is, it's important to speak to someone. Very important if you're feeling something because they will guide you and they will help you process. The key here is processing. But it is also important to know that it's not important where it's in perpetuity. It is time limited. So you want to know that I want to go to a coach and I want to go to someone to help me heal. But I want to go to someone with the end objective that they will give me the skill set that I will develop myself so that I can continue to heal myself through the journey of life. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. Now I have another follow-up question to that, which is like the biggest elephant in almost all rooms pan India.
I know it.
I can speak about India though.
Yeah.
So in that regard, most of us don't really know when we need to go to a coach. So if you can shed some light that, what are the triggers, like maybe for the people who are attached with such individuals, or like, for example, if I actually need to go to a therapist, how would I know? Because in India, we have this old traditional methodologies which are still prominent in majority part of the countries, wherein a slap from the dad does the trick, but that's not the result. That's like a paracetamol, but it doesn't cure you completely.
Absolutely.
Right? So how do we know that we need professional help? Is there any particular trigger?
So there's a way of understanding it. So emotions are kind of bifurcated into three different areas. There is the emotion, there's the feeling, there's the sensation. Okay, so you have all of that, the thought, feeling, sensation, emotions, emotional profiling, the psychology of the self. There are two things. There's needs and there's wants. Okay, wants fall into the expectations, needs fall into the requirements. You will know the difference when you find a requirement is essential to your well-being. A want is, okay, I just want that. Okay. Now, when this happens, if you notice that you're sad, that's manageable. But if the sadness lasts for 2 weeks, then it's depression. Then that's treatable. So manageable, you can do at home. Treatable, you need some help. Okay. Similarly, stress, manageable. None of us are immune to anxiety and stress. But when the stress actually goes into anxiety and it starts to physically manifest, treatable. That's when you need treatment. So my answer to you would be, you'll understand when it's need-based versus want-based. If it's want-based, you can still try and work with the slump from your father, or the little push that you need, or of course, the nazar utaro.
Yeah,
You know, the nazar. How can you forget the nazar
that's
utaro?
India.
Okay, I believe a lot
Yeah.
of that. So I'm not mocking it in any which
No,
way.
me too.
But yeah, but the fact of the matter is then it goes into need, when it goes into you feeling a certain way and it's affecting your behavioral patterns, where then you realize that, okay, something is off. And let me tell you something, Shar. The body, the system is phenomenal. It talks to you constantly. Okay, you'll know when your system is off, and you'll know when you cannot manage that at home and you need to actually go outside to get a diagnosis or to even just get some sort of remedial help. And you don't always need medication. I don't believe, by the way, this is a controversial statement, but I don't personally believe that you need medication. I think you can do a lot with just talk therapy, thought therapy, and behavioral therapy as well, which is
Okay.
right.
So now one particular specific question to this: when do you know is it enough? So like, for example, as you said that if it's 2 weeks of sadness, that's probably some sort of depression, and you should consult a therapist. Now, I have been into situations where I just flip the switch when I've had enough. So do you think that is the best trigger, or do you think that we should have a timeline?
So that when you flip the switch and you've had enough, that's avoidance. That to me is where you're just saying, okay, I want to avoid this. There are two ways of dealing with what you're feeling. The unhealthy ways where you keep thinking about what you're feeling, and then you suddenly say, I'm shutting the thought off. The healthy way is to feel what you're feeling, because the more you feel what you're feeling, the less your feelings you have power. Your feelings actually lose their power if you keep feeling them. But because there is also a time limit to how much you can feel what you're feeling. But your thoughts, you can ruminate forever. You can go to sleep with the thought. You can wake up with the thought. Then you come and tell me, okay, Shai, I'm having issues with sleep. So then my question to you is going to be, wait, are you having issues falling asleep or staying asleep? Which one is it? Because all of this is based on your thoughts. So that's why I say that I will validate what you're feeling, Shar, but I'll dispute the thoughts behind it. So if you're telling me you can switch off, no, I still have to work with that. I have to work with that because you're not supposed to switch off. You're actually supposed to just let it subside by itself. Because in the end, anxiety is your biggest friend also. It stops you from making dumb decisions. It stops you from making reckless decisions, and it keeps you from taking risks. It's your friend. But when anxiety becomes you and you become anxiety, that's when the problem arises. And you can't just switch that off, no matter how much you think you can.
That's quite interesting. So basically, all my life, what I have been doing is just postpone the inevitable.
Absolutely.
Right. So now you just mentioned that feeling is okay, and processing the feelings, or
Very important.
keep going with it. Something or the other thing is going to happen in the mind.
Right.
Now, the new breed or the new Gen Zs are more inclined towards journaling. Even the greats did it. So even I do it. So the point being that you put your feelings on a paper, and because paper doesn't speak to you, because paper can just absorb. That's the whole myth or the idea or the fact behind why people journal. Is there a correct way? Because some people say that journal in the morning, some say journal in the evening. Do you think journaling is a good way to process your emotions better?
I very much love journaling. I think journaling is great. It's interesting for you to say that because I'll share something personal. We call this like the self of the therapist. I decided to become a therapist after I wrote a book on the pain that I've gone through.
Okay.
So to me, that book, which is 186 pages, was actually a big journal that I decided to do. And then right after that, I said, you know what? I need to go into therapy. So now to answer your question, journaling is a fabulous way. I myself believe in it, but there are two parts to journaling. One is reflections and one is trauma relief. Okay? If you're doing journaling to relieve trauma, inner child, parenting, childhood memories, moments of bullying, trauma that you have experienced, any pain through your life, trauma, that's pain. Okay? I would not recommend you do that at night, because if you do it at night, you will dream about it. You will have a restless sleep. You will wake up emotional. I would recommend you do it in the evening or the late afternoon. Okay. I would not even recommend you do it early morning, because then your day goes about you thinking about that. So maybe right after work, when you're switching off, when you're unwinding, you can journal a little bit. Maybe on a Sunday, you can journal. Okay. So that's it. When you're doing reflections, Now, those are reflections where you're just reflecting on the regular everyday challenges. Those can be done any time of the day. Okay, I don't necessarily believe that you should get up in the morning and do your Surya Namaskar and then say, okay, I'm going to sit down now and reflect. You can do that at any time. You can reflect as you're walking to work. You can reflect as you're in the car. You can reflect as you're listening to music as well. I've had people that listen to music and write. They want to do it that way, and that's absolutely fine. The idea of writing your thoughts and emotions onto paper is beautiful, not only because, like you said, you kind of write it on something which is black and white, but it's actually because it just releases from your system and it gets put externally rather than internally. Because the biggest issue we have today is we internalize everything that happens to us, when ideally we should be externalizing it. The day you externalize what happens to you is the day you can actually say, you know what? It's away from me. It's kept over there. This whole thing of let it go and move on. I don't subscribe to that view. Another controversial statement, because I believe to let go of something, you have to hold on to it. And to move on from something, you have to go back to where it is and then move on. I believe, and I have it tattooed on it, let it be and move forward. Because when you let something be, you're not holding on to it. It's just there, but it's not a part of you anymore. And when you move forward, it's just there. You move forward. You may move forward with it because it is your pain. As a therapist, I do not tell you I can get rid of your trauma. I never can. But I definitely can help you live a better life despite your trauma. I can't erase what happened to you. I'm not God. But I can help you understand that it happened. Let it be and move forward.
So let's now migrate a bit towards the sector, like all the CEOs and the owners of the business, because I believe, being one, that there are instances every day that triggers something. It may be in form of an anger, because or it may be any sort of emotional reflex, I would say. So now, how do you think that if something happens and let's say we just got angry in the office, or we just got really sad about a loss probably, how do you think we can calm our nerves really quickly?
So, as long as you immediately and purposefully recognize that what you're feeling at that moment, again, you feel it rather than think about it, you feel it, it will subside. There's like a 15-minute urge to be impulsive and to let it out, which we call projection. Something bad happens to you, you want to project it. But if for 15 minutes you just sit with what has happened to you and you realize that, okay, listen, a lot of what is happening to you is how you're thinking about what's happening to you rather than feeling what's actually happened. A loss or something that goes on at that given moment. If you sit with it, you feel it, you let it subside, and then you go outside. You don't become impulsive about it. But if you're going to keep thinking about it, and if somebody walks in, those thoughts are still going on, you are going to project and you are going to let it out. So the best way to do it is to take those 15 minutes, and what I call is practice the pause. The pause is take those 15 minutes and actually sit down with it, pause, do some mindfulness, breathe 4, 8, 8, which is what I like to do, which is breathe in for 4, hold for 8, release for 8. Do that multiple times, ground yourself, and then decide to let other people enter into your space. You have to take your space at that moment. When you're feeling something and you know that you have that immediate, as a CEO, as a COO, as a CFO, as any senior management, you have that whole team that looks up to you and that needs you. You need to take those 15 minutes to reboot yourself, just like we would do a phone, and calm yourself down yourself, and then go ahead and deal with what you have to deal with.
So that reminds me of what I have recently picked up in the past few years, that if I have to take a really crucial or a critical call, and I know that it can go either way, so I tend to sleep a night.
Okay.
So I even say this to my employees, that if you want to bring something to me and you don't really know how I would react, sleep on it.
Absolutely.
Because after sleeping, tomorrow morning, if it's still that important, let's talk about it, or I take a call in that way. And if it is not important, we just let it subside.
That's a great strategy.
Do you think it works in the long run, or is it again my flip the switch concept?
No, it works in the long run unless this particular thing could be at the expense of a decision that needs to be made at that moment.
Okay.
So for example, if it's crucial for you to make that decision, then it has to be made. See, what happens is sometimes We move with emotion when we should move with strategy. Okay. Now, if this particular decision requires you to move with strategy, then you should. The mind is the only organ, believe it or not, that does not live in the present. It lives in the past or the future, but it affects everything in the present. So you have to purposefully bring your mind to the present at those times as well and say, listen, I may not want to sleep on it and work in the future. Okay.
Definitely. So that brings me to another question, that all the CEOs today are either focused on strategy or are too emotionally attached to anything or any or everything they do. How do you think we balance out the emotional part and the strategy part? How do we know when to switch to strategy, or how do we know that, okay, this has to be an emotional decision?
So there are two parts to emotions and emotional development: emotional intelligence, emotional maturity. Both come with experience. Okay, you can't have either unless you've had experiences that have led you to feeling extremely emotional, experiences that have led you to feeling loss and failure as well. That's the only way you can get there. So to answer your question, you will know. So strategically, there are certain decisions that you have to make: ROI based, numbers based, literally black and white based. Now, emotionally, there are going to be a lot of decisions you have to make as a corporate leader as well. Emotionally, for your staff, for your business, for offsites, for team building exercises, for the mental health of your organization. Remember, I say this, I'm digressing for a second. When I do individual therapy, you are my client. When I do couples therapy, the relationship is my client. Okay. Similarly, when you're in that CEO position, you can be looking at your team, you can be looking at yourself, but there are times when you have to look at the whole organization. That's who you're focused on. At that point, you can't be emotional. You have to be strategic. So I think the best way to answer your question is you'll know when your decisions need to be made for the betterment of the company versus the betterment of the individuals of the company.
Definitely.
When you're looking at the individuals, you have to be empathetic, you have to be compassionate, because if COVID has taught us one thing, it's taught us that mental health is very prevalent. And it's taught us that beyond mental health being prevalent, it's your responsibility to safeguard that if you are coming in that role. You can't dismiss it. So you validate what your employees are going through. You validate what is required. But then after that, you also try and figure out how and what is the best way to tackle it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
I'm round a little bit.
No, I'm quite clear
I
on
tend
it.
to do that. Tell me when I do. Yeah.
You're doing fabulously, and I think I've learned a lot today. So basically, the one key takeaway I understood is, like, if I'm dealing with a person, deal as a human, be empathetic there. If it is about the whole company, strategy would be a better way.
Can I answer? Can I give you one more thing on that, since we're talking about empathy? Because I think it's really important. There's two parts to empathy. Okay, there's affective empathy, AFF. There's effective empathy, EFF. I think it's very important for senior management to understand that. Affective empathy is sometimes where we can lose our emotions because somebody's going through something. We're not only feeling it, but we start to become that feeling, and we start to feel it to the intensity of that level. That's when we get too emotional. Effective empathy is where we empathize with what whoever we're dealing with, children, staff members, family, whatever they're dealing with, we empathize with it, but we can say, I feel it, I understand it, but now I'm going to hold your hand through it. That's more effective. We want our leaders to be effective in empathy, not affective, where suddenly what they're feeling, if your employee is angry, you start to get angry too. No, that will work against you. You want to be able to navigate that emotion by taking them through the journey safely and securely, rather than amplifying that emotion and then bringing it onto you, because then that will backfire.
So when you talk about anger, I think anger is one of the most prominent emotion in today's leaders, in all levels probably, and that is an emotion which I believe that I hear of the most often. That people talk about outbursts, and that's where the bad boss scenarios come into place. How do you think that all the top management professionals can manage their anger very well while in the office or at home? Because all this anger usually comes from people behavior, because you meet a lot of people. It comes from your family behavior because they expect something.
Right.
So there's a lot going on in life which manifests usually as anger. So what do you think would be a good way to, calm yourself down in such situations and maybe understand that if it is going too beyond a certain level, then you need professional help. Because I asked this because I think few days back only I had a friend and he was just talking to me about that I'm getting so angry that it's now coming to my family, which is scaring me. And I could see that he was teary eyed
Right.
because he realizes that there's something wrong, but he doesn't really know what to do about it.
Okay. Well, that is a brilliant question. All right. And that's a brilliant, brilliant synopsis of what you're saying. Okay. So, honestly speaking, the reason I'm smiling is because anger is really not an emotion per se. It's never about being angry, it's always about what precedes the outburst. Anger is a disguise for fear, disappointment, insecurity, emasculation, and all of those other things. Sadness, loss. Anger really is never, ever the emotion that is the first one. It is actually because of something else that you are feeling, and it gets masked and comes out as anger. So when your employer or your friend or somebody is saying that I'm so angry all the time, we need to figure out the one thing that we never, ever ask. It's not, how can I feel angry? What is what is going on and all that? It's why. What is behind the anger? That's what you need to treat. If you just say, okay, I'm not going to be angry today, and I'm going to stop myself from being angry, you're still just taking that Tylenol. Just like you said, you're taking that paracetamol. Anger is the symptom of something much deeper. You have to go to understanding what is that real thing. Why? The why behind the anger. Is it fear? Is it insecurity? Are you battling some trauma? Is it post-traumatic stress disorder? Is there some PTSD in your life? Is there inner child issues that you need to deal with? What is going on?
I think probably most of them will say irritation.
Okay, so why are you irritated? And there is this method that we use in cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, right? So there's a method we use called the downward arrow where we keep asking why. Why? So what does it mean to you? And why? But why? It's very annoying for the client, but eventually you'll get to that core belief, which could even be as simple as, I'm not angry, I just feel worthless. No one loves me. No one respects me. I don't feel valued. Those are the cores we have to address. And Shara, that is what it is. So it's not that your friend's angry, your friend's hurting. What's causing that pain?
That's a very good take. I think he would love to watch this episode though.
I hope he does, and he's welcome to connect with me.
Definitely. I'll share your contact with him. Yeah. Now, one particular question that struck me, as you said that when you are sitting with a client, you keep on pushing them with whys.
I do.
So I'm just wondering that after, maybe 10 or 20 whys, have you ever faced an outburst that... So how is it like? How do you manage those kind of situations?
The outburst is where we actually get to the real reason.
Okay.
That's the amazing part of it. If my client has an outburst, I actually consider that a tangible example of growth. Because to me, that's where it's finally coming to the surface. But coming to the surface in a guided manner.
Definitely, yeah.
Rather than a chaotic manner. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring it out. I always say that I'm the homeopathy of therapy, where I'll give you that, where, you know how they say homeopathy brings it all up to the surface and then it releases? That's what I'm trying to do. Now, I don't want a volcanic eruption, but I'm trying to at least get a little bit out, a little bit of what I can.
What do you think would be the best way to go into therapy? Like if we are dealing with some things, do you think to do the therapy with the spouse is a better idea, or wing it solo?
Okay, so this is interesting. So if you want to go for marriage therapy, relationship therapy, couples therapy, whatever you do, I always believe that the best thing to do is to come together and to say, okay, listen, these are the issues. See, what happens is most of the time we're fighting each other when we should actually together be fighting the issue. Okay? We get confrontational rather than conversational because we're not conversing with one another, we're confronting one another rather than confronting the issue at hand. So I think the best thing to do is if you can sit down and identify what is going on, and this can work in the corporate world as well. If you identify why the company is struggling or what is going on with the employees, we get down to the problem and we identify it. If you both can come to the same agreement that this is the problem, then go together. for couples therapy. But if your narrative is so skewed that your perception, which is your reality and your truth, and my perception, which is my reality and my truth, are so 180 degrees different, at that point I would say, okay, do an individual session first, and then we'll come together as a couple. So technically I use the Gottman method, which is where I take couples together, but I do also see them individually to get their understanding, and then I choose to bring them together. The strategy behind that, most likely, if your therapist is a therapist that uses emotionally focused therapy or Gottman therapy or something to that degree, will identify the roadmap for you. So you can call up the couples therapist or the marriage counselor and say, this is what our issue is. How would you like to do it? And then that person can decide, like I would decide. Or you can, like I said, identify the problem. And if both of you see it as the same thing and you're on the same page, go together to the therapist and say, this is what we're dealing with, and take it from there.
Now, taking it one step further, like let's say that you are having some sort of issues with your relationship at the current moment. It might be a recent fight, or it might be something which is more prolonged. And it does impact your work in some way or the other.
Absolutely.
So how can you bifurcate your work life and your personal life to an extent, or is it not possible?
It's very possible, but it goes back to exactly what I was saying. You have to externalize it. Not every problem has a solution, but every situation has an outcome. And if you externalize whatever you're personally going through and you realize that, okay, this is part of a different version or a different part of my life, then you don't bring that with you. Again, it's sitting down with your thoughts, journaling them, taking time out, practicing the pause, and realizing that you do not want to internalize everything that's happening to you, which means that you also don't want to bring that into a space where it need not be. It's possible, it's simple, but it's not easy. And that's why I say life is simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. But again, it's a process that you have to learn. It's a skill set that you have to develop. But you can do it.
That's an interesting take on it. Definitely. So now the next thing, if we say, let's say 4 or 5 years back, emotional therapy or any kind of therapy for that matter for your mental health was considered kind of a taboo especially in this secondary parts of India, like for example, in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And it is still a bit stereotyped, but people are accepting it more and more. What do you think changed?
So it was always considered taboo, like you said, because it makes you look weak. Okay, it's considered a weakness. If you need therapy, that means that something is wrong. It's very sad that if you were physically ill, people will look at you, they'll feel bad, they will take you to the doctor, they will want to heal you, they want to take care of you. There's empathy for that. But if you're mentally facing something, people will not look at you that way. They'll feel like, no, you can get rid of it yourself. You can deal with it. I think what changed was, aside from COVID, where people realized that struggle is real.
Yeah.
None of us are immune to anxiety and stress, as I always say it, and it's okay to not be okay. I think what has changed is actually social media, the new generation, the new way that the new generation looks at the struggles that they are going through, the challenges that they're going through, multi-generational trauma that has trickled down from ancestors to grandparents, to parents, to children, and continues to trickle down. And the fact that the suicide rate amongst teens and cutting and self-harm has gone up so tremendously. Substance abuse, avoidance, anxiety, all of these different methodologies to take care of what our children are going through and the new generation is going through and we have gone through. I think it's just the fact that people now are ready to embrace that they don't mind if their child is anxious because they just want their child to stay alive.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, and that's what's important today. And I think people are understanding that there is so much more growth from the uns than there is from anything else. And by the uns, I mean the unsilencing, the unlearning of old patterns, doing, and the unclosing yourself off to what is necessary. Today, therapy is not a luxury. It's not a privilege. It's a right that everybody should have. And if your parents do not understand it, then it's honestly important to talk to them and unsilence yourself so they understand that it is your right. And I know that it's hard for society in India to accept what I'm saying. But I am saying that, again, do you want your child anxious or do you want your child alive? So let's treat that anxiety so they stay alive.
So now talking about COVID and how do you want to stay alive? So it boils down to health.
Mhm.
So I think that in these days, and that includes myself, that people think too much about their health as well. Like 6 months back, I had this thing that I constantly felt that something's wrong with my health. So I got all sort of checkup done. I got all whatever I could, and nothing came out. And it still took me 2 months to figure it out that everything is fine. It was just a phase, and it was just going on in my head again and again.
Mhm.
And I know many people who feel the same way. How do we know that? Because they constantly talk about it.
Mhm.
They talk about longevity. They talk about what they are doing. They talk about that I just left sugar today, and I'm on a very healthy trajectory, and it's just health, 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 health. How do you think all this talk of health and focusing too much on it is some way or the other making us more anxious?
Okay. So the whole thing of focusing on health so much is also because everywhere you go now, that's all you hear. Okay. You hear that, health is wealth, health is wealth, health is wealth. And I do believe that. My contention over here is that we're mandated. Even we do this with our kids. We're mandated that we need to do a physical checkup once a year. Now people are doing it twice and thrice a year. Okay.
Yep.
Because like you said, they're hyper focused on health. Fair enough. Everybody's focused on health. We don't know what we're eating. We don't know what we're breathing. We don't know what we're catching. Today, we have multiple strains of COVID. Now there's influenza A. Monkeypox is coming back. We don't understand what's going on. Okay. So, yes, everybody's focused, justifiably so. As I said, I validate that feeling. There's a fear for health. But my question to you is, Sharad, and my question to everybody is, we always do mapping, blood tests, checking of our physical health. Why don't we do a mental health checkup? Why are we not mandated to do that? Why are we not telling our children that, okay, you're going to do an executive health checkup before you leave for the US for university, before you're doing this, but I don't need to send you to a health professional for mental checkup just to make sure you're feeling okay. Why can't we do that? Why can't we say that once a year we're going to do a physical, but once or twice a year we're also going to go talk to someone to make sure we're mentally well? Mental balance is as important as physical balance.
I think it's even more so important because if you have a good mental health, I think everything will fall into place.
Imagine if you actually, when you were going through all of this, said, hey, wait, physically everything's checked off. Let me go talk to someone and just make sure I'm mentally feeling all right. They would have told you, listen, Sharad, you're anxious, not because you're a hypochondriac, not because you're hyper-focused, but you're just anxious because part of you is wondering that, okay, I'm feeling off. But you were just feeling mentally off, not physically off.
I mean, you address it in the truest of the forms because that's exactly what I realized. It's just that now I feel that if I could only know that with the checkups, I could have gotten a mental checkup done, I would have, gone out of it within like a couple of weeks.
Yeah, a lot of time.
Yeah. Because, and I believe that most of the people in senior positions or in any positions in life, if you're going through something, you need to come out with it.
Absolutely.
Because what happens is we do talk to our friends who have no idea what you're talking about, and it's either on a laughter or it's like, bhai, mera bhi saath mein.
Right.
It's just that there's no result there.
No.
So I think seeking professional advice is something I would now recommend to everybody when we talk about health checkups that get a mental checkup done. And moving on the same track, we have talked about CEOs and professionals on the very senior level of the society and business. Let's talk about the startups, the new breed of entrepreneurs that's coming through. I believe that they are so much into hustling that they also, in some way or the other, completely ignore their mental health. Yeah. Have you had such situations before? Have you been with such startup CEOs?
Oh, yeah.
Can you share some insights of what startup founders go through? Because I know for sure that for them to even realize, they'll have to come out of the grind, which they are not going to do.
Absolutely. You know what's happened is the startup generation. There are two types of startups. The startups that are the new generation, they're coming in. They understand that there's anxiety associated to it. They know that they're going to be burnt out at the age of 25.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you have the other sort of startups. Those are the ones that are done working for people and want to do their own things. They're the older generation. Now, they're still not used to it. Okay. They're like the ones that are saying, okay, Anxiety is there, but I'm gonna just deal with my anxiety because anxiety is part and parcel of life. I'm not weak. I can deal with it. I'm supposed to take it on. And they continue to go through this. They're the ones that now are finding themselves now crashing at night, getting physically ill at times, and struggling. So the thing over here is when we look at startups, when we look at entrepreneurs, when we look at individuals that are going into the space of where they're throwing themselves into a stressful situation, okay, the first thing that they need to do is understand that they should be talking to someone, okay, not because they are sick. Why do you think I never, ever referred to any of my clients as a patient? They're not patients. Patient automatically makes you think you're sick.
Yeah.
They're clients that need a little handholding. Okay, so number one, they must realize that anxiety is going to be part and parcel of this. Struggle is going to be part and parcel of this. I am hustling, but I'm not going to hustle at my own expense. I'm going to hustle and I'm going to be talking to someone about how I'm hustling so that I don't end up brain dead, okay, or brain fried or brain drained, okay? And that will impact how my company will grow also. So you are going to actually first and foremost be purposeful and intentional, as I say, about realizing that the field you're in is going to require you to seek some outside advice, outside release. Number two, what Australia did was amazing. You heard what they've done, right? That you don't have to answer your call after work hours.
Yeah.
You do not have to respond. There's no real expectation. So you're going to also give yourself the opportunity to say, this is my company, this is my baby, but just like even my newborn baby is going to sleep and I'm going to take some time to myself, I'm going to switch off. And when I switch off, I'm really going to switch off. That doesn't mean I'm going to be looking at the market. I'm going to be looking at the other time zone. I'm going to see what's going on. I'm going to go through all my emails. No, I'm going to switch off. That's number two. Number three, you are going to say that I am also, aside from an entrepreneur, I am also a human being and I'm responsible for me. I always say that I love myself because that gives you a reason to love me. So you say to yourself, I am going to take care of myself because that gives the world a reason to also look at me and know I value myself and I can care for myself. And you have to do that as well. And number four, and finally, you realize that this project that you're working on, this baby that you're building, this business that you're creating, this dream that you're fulfilling is also not the totality of your life. You have to balance what you do with who you are and what you need. Again, wants and needs, purpose and passion. You have to just balance it out. So if you address all four of these elements, and if you realize that through this journey, as you are mentoring other people, you might need someone to mentally, healthfully mentor you, it's okay. I think that would, again, I went round and round, sorry.
No, I picked up a lot. So
hope
basically,
the
I could
audience
relate to
does.
one particular point when you talked about how Australia did it. So I had this personal policy that I don't call my people post 8 p.m.
Good for you.
So unless it's like moving the mountains urgent,
Right.
like it has to be
Understood,
done no
of course.
matter what, I make sure that I don't call them.
Good for you.
And the difference is I live with my father, my family.
Uh-huh.
So my father keeps on telling me, he doesn't look at the time. Hey, call him, tell him this or get
Yeah.
this sorted. I'm like, that it can
New
be done tomorrow.
generation, see? New
It can.
mindset.
He's like, what will happen if you do it right now?
Yeah.
I'm like, yep, we can do it in the morning.
Yep.
And one day I realized that, so I overheard this in the office balcony, and one of the people was there. The one good thing happening is that the boss never calls us late hour.
There you go.
So I only have to hear to my wife's nagging. I was like, dude, I never nag.
I love it.
But really, the point when you said the Australia, I could definitely relate to it. So switching off
Right.
is of the utmost importance. And so being from a established business side and also from a startup side, I cannot emphasize more on understanding the fact that switching off is really important. Because I've had days where I call my project managers in my construction business product managers,
Mhm.
and my product managers as project managers, and address completely different things. So switch off, relax, and be calm. Any particular advice you would like to give all these young entrepreneurs who are up and coming?
Mhm.
A few pointers for them to have a good, healthy lifestyle and a good, healthy mental lifestyle.
Absolutely. Number one, the first thing is everybody should honestly understand one thing. Confidence is not linear. It goes up one day, up, down. It's based on how your day is. Understand that as an entrepreneur. You're not going to be confident every day, and that's okay. Faith is linear. That's always growing. So what I mean by that is have faith in the process, have faith in yourself, because if you have faith in yourself, you will continuously grow. Number two, realize you do not have to be better tomorrow. You just have to be more evolved tomorrow. It's not about being better every day. It's about being more evolved and growing. You grow through your experiences. You don't go through them. You grow through them. Number three, practice mindfulness. Extremely important to bring mindfulness practice into your life. That means whether you want to sit down and listen to your favorite music, whether you want to just meditate, whether you want to just, close your eyes and lie down. Practice something that brings you to the present, because you're always working in the past or the future. And there's no better calm than the present. Do that. And number four, which I think is the most important thing, love yourself, as I said, because that gives the world a reason to love you. And choose yourself. Choose yourself. That's not selfish. You can choose you and still be able to love everyone around you. But if you choose you, then you know what? Life chooses you as well. Because it's not about the energy you put out. I'm not talking about the universe. I'm talking about when you choose you, you're making a purposeful and intentional choice to say, listen, no matter what life throws at me, I will choose me and it will take me through it because I'm strong enough. So I think that would be it.
Great. So, I mean that there's so much I have learned from you today. So many things to process in my own head. The best statement that you made is let it be and move forward.
Move forward.
Move forward.
Yeah.
So sorry for
Thank
that,
you.
but
No,
that's gonna
okay.
be my new mantra,
Good.
because that is something very unique which you have mentioned today.
Yeah.
And I could relate to it very well because I try to do that at times.
Mhm.
It's not about addressing my past, it's about knowing that what has happened and now make use of that knowledge to be better.
Yeah, it's a lesson, not a life sentence.
Exactly.
That's it.
And as you very well said that it's about growing through life,
Mhm.
and you don't have to be better each day and every day.
No.
You just have to
Please
evolve.
don't. That is very difficult to live up to.
So I guess
Yeah.
it will be right to say that you got to enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
And, not just wing it and just keep on going that
Yeah.
I need to do this, that, make some money, do this.
Yeah.
Stay calm,
Yeah.
do mindfulness,
Absolutely.
approach a professional. If you feel something is going on for too long, get professional help. It's you. Invest in yourself
Absolutely.
and be happy. Love yourself.
Yeah. There's two types of efforts, Shara. Effort as effort and effort as investment. Effort as investment is important too. And so is effort as effort. In the end, it's mevolution, as I call it. I coined that. That's the evolution of me. So just focus on mevolution. It's the evolution of you.
Definitely. So to sum it up, I would say that we are going to let this be and we are going to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well done.